When people talk about the greatest weapons in boxing history, you'll hear Tyson's uppercut, Foreman's power, or Ali's speed. But ask any fighter who tasted it, and they'll tell you Larry Holmes's jab stood above them all. It wasn't just quick, it wasn't just accurate, it was brutal. Like getting cracked with a steel rod over and over until your whole game plan fell apart, and that weapon wasn't built on natural talent alone. Holmes forged it through some of the hardest training routines in heavyweight history. From endless roadwork before sunrise, to hundreds of rounds on the heavy bag and double end bag, to brutal sparring sessions where he treated every gym day like a championship fight. And remember, he sharpened that jab while standing across from Muhammad Ali, serving as Ali's sparring partner for years. Instead of breaking him, it turned Holmes into a machine, determined to carve his own legacy. Welcome to Back to Boxing. Larry Holmes was born on November 3rd, 1949 in Cuthbert, Georgia, the fourth of 12 children. When he was 4, his mother moved the family to Easton, Pennsylvania, hoping for better opportunities. But life in Easton was anything but easy. Holmes grew up in poverty. His father worked multiple jobs but eventually left the family, leaving his mother to raise the children alone. Money was scarce, and the neighborhood was unforgiving. For young Larry, fighting wasn't a pastime, it was survival. By 7th grade, Holmes left school to help support his family. He worked where he could, washing cars, hauling in construction, even running errands for cash. Those years built the relentless work ethic that would later carry him through the hardest training camps of his career. At 18, everything changed. A friend brought Holmes to a local boxing gym. For the first time, fighting had structure. The ring became a place of focus and discipline, not just survival. Holmes quickly realized boxing could be more than an escape. It could be his future. His first trainer immediately saw potential. Despite starting late, Holmes showed natural timing, sharp reflexes, and a feel for distance. More importantly, he had the kind of hunger and durability that veteran trainers valued. His unusually long reach became a weapon, and his jab was sharpened into his most dangerous tool. Training in those early years was simple but punishing. Heavy bag sessions until his arms burned, endless rounds of footwork drills, mastering the basics through sheer repetition. Holmes didn't have the flash of a natural prodigy, but he carried something stronger, the unshakable belief that hard work could level any gap. The sparring partner years. In 1971, Holmes's career took its most important turn. He became Muhammad Ali's sparring partner, and for several years absorbed lessons no formal training could provide. Working as Ali's sparring partner wasn't glamorous. Holmes was human target practice for the world's most famous boxer. Day after day, he climbed into the ring with Ali, absorbing punishment while Ali prepared for his biggest fights. But Holmes saw opportunity, not burden. Ali's training camps were legendary for their intensity. Holmes sparred not just with Ali, but with other top contenders who came through the camps. Every day was graduate-level boxing education. During these sessions, Holmes truly developed his jab. Ali was a jab master himself, using it to control distance and frustrate opponents. But Holmes's jab was different, heavier, more committed, designed to inflict damage rather than just create openings. The transformation wasn't immediate. Holmes spent countless rounds getting outboxed by Ali, learning through defeat what it took to compete at the highest level. Ali critiqued Holmes's technique between rounds, pointing out flaws and suggesting improvements. This direct instruction from boxing's greatest practitioner was invaluable. Holmes learned that the jab wasn't just throwing your hand out quickly. It required perfect timing, precise footwork, and the ability to disguise the punch until the last moment. He studied how Ali used feints, created angles, and recovered instantly to avoid counters. Most importantly, Holmes learned the mental game. He watched how Ali handled pressure, maintained confidence when behind, and used psychological warfare as effectively as physical techniques. These lessons proved crucial in his championship years. The sparring period also toughened Holmes physically. Taking punishment from world-class fighters regularly built his legendary chin and taught him to absorb shots while fighting effectively. This durability became one of his greatest assets. Holmes also learned patience, understanding that greatness is built slowly through long hours of unseen work. He carried this mindset into his own training camps, where discipline became his edge. By the mid-1970s, Holmes had absorbed everything possible from his sparring role. He'd sharpened his signature jab through hundreds of rounds with elite competition and developed the mental toughness needed to survive at the sport's highest level. He was ready to step out of Ali's shadow and build a legacy of his own. The training regimen that built perfection. When Larry Holmes set his sights on a championship and began working with trainer Eddie Futch, his entire program was built around one goal: weaponizing his jab. Futch understood that Holmes's unusually long reach, combined with his natural sense of timing, could make the jab not just a setup punch, but the centerpiece of his style. The key was volume and precision. Holmes didn't throw a few hundred jabs in practice, he threw thousands. Every training day was built around perfecting that single punch until it became automatic, delivered the same way in the gym as it would be in the 15th round of a fight. His mornings began with roadwork, usually 5 to 7 miles at a steady pace, sometimes pushing closer to 10 during peak camp. Holmes ran the steep hills of Easton to strengthen his legs, believing that a powerful jab started from the ground up. He often sprinted at the end of runs to simulate the bursts of energy needed late in fights. Afternoons were dedicated to technical work. Shadowboxing was a cornerstone. Holmes spent countless rounds in front of mirrors, drilling his stance, foot placement, and jab mechanics until every detail felt natural. The heavy bag built power and endurance, with long sessions of combinations anchored by the jab. The speed bag sharpened rhythm and timing, while the double-end bag forced accuracy and control. He also made regular use of the jump rope to improve footwork, balance, and overall conditioning. Sparring was Holmes's classroom. He rotated sparring partners to test different aspects of his game. Taller fighters forced him to sharpen his timing, while shorter, pressure-oriented partners helped him refine distance control. His jab was tested under every scenario, ensuring it could adapt to any style. Holmes also trained for mental durability. He studied tapes of great fighters, visualizing how his jab would break down opponents. Futch emphasized staying calm under pressure, and Holmes developed a poker-faced composure in sparring that carried into his championship fights. Strength training was simple but effective. Holmes did bodyweight exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups by the hundreds, focusing on functional endurance rather than bulk. Medicine ball drills and resistance work added explosiveness without sacrificing mobility. Equally important was recovery and consistency. Holmes didn't train only in fight camps. He kept himself in shape year-round. He respected rest, proper meals, and the need to let his body rebuild from grueling sessions. That constant discipline meant he was always close to fighting shape, never starting camp out of condition. The result was one of the most reliable weapons in boxing history. Holmes's jab wasn't just a punch, it was a strategy, a shield, and a sword. Built through repetition, roadwork, and relentless discipline, it became the standard by which every heavyweight jab is still measured today. Anatomy of the perfect jab. What made Larry Holmes's jab different from every other heavyweight in history? The answer was technical perfection, achieved through years of obsessive refinement. Holmes's jab wasn't just a punch, it was a precision instrument delivered with surgical accuracy. The first element was footwork. Where many heavyweights planted flat and relied on upper body movement, Holmes built his jab on perfect positioning. He stepped in with his lead foot, creating forward momentum that added force without losing balance, keeping him ready to defend or launch combinations immediately. His natural advantages were clear: 6'3" with an 81-inch reach, but reach alone meant nothing. Many tall fighters pour with lazy arm-only jabs. Holmes used his whole body, full extension, shoulder high for protection, hips engaged, and feet set to maximize impact. Power generation was textbook. It began with a subtle weight shift from back foot to front, transferring energy up through his legs and hips. The shoulder rotated forward, the arm drove straight, and the wrist snapped on impact, adding whip-like speed and sting. What separated Holmes was versatility. He threw long jabs to keep opponents at bay, short, snappy ones in close, and everything in between. He could fire it moving forward, backward, or sideways. He mastered the double and triple jab too, delivering rapid sequences where each punch still carried snap and authority. Few heavyweights could match that consistency. Then came accuracy. Holmes could split tight guards, catch opponents off balance, and land on moving targets with unnerving precision. This wasn't luck. It was thousands of hours refining distance, timing, and rhythm until they became instinct. The jab was more than a fence, it was control. Holmes used it to set up his right hand, dictate the pace, and keep opponents stuck on the outside where they couldn't counter. It was both sword and shield, forcing rivals to fight on his terms. And the psychological toll was immense. Opponents knew it was coming, yet couldn't stop it. Round after round, the jab broke rhythm, frustrated strategy, and wore down resolve. Fighters grew reckless, emotional, and walked into Holmes's bigger shots, all because of a punch they thought they could handle. Holmes's jab was the perfect marriage of natural gifts and scientific refinement. He transformed boxing's simplest weapon into its deadliest, proving that mastery of one punch could define a champion and rewrite heavyweight history. Results in the ring. The ultimate proof of Larry Holmes's training and perfected jab came under the brightest lights. From 1978 to 1985, he used it to dominate the heavyweight division, carving out one of the longest and most consistent championship reigns in history. His breakthrough arrived on June 9, 1978, against Ken Norton for the vacant WBC title. Norton had beaten Muhammad Ali and was known for breaking his jaw. The fight was brutal and competitive, but Holmes's jab made the difference. Round after round, it disrupted Norton's rhythm, kept him at range, and forced him to reset. In the 15th and final round, Holmes's jab opened the door for a decisive rally that secured him the championship. His first title defense against Alfredo Evangelista highlighted the jab's destructive power. Evangelista was durable, but Holmes punished him with jabs that weren't just scoring points, they were breaking him down physically. By the 7th round, his face was swollen and bloodied, forcing the stoppage. Perhaps Holmes's most famous performance came on October 2nd, 1980, against his former mentor, Muhammad Ali. Ali, attempting a comeback at 38, had slowed, but the fight was still deeply symbolic. Holmes had once learned from Ali, even sparring with him for years. Now he used those lessons against his idol. From the opening bell, Holmes's jab controlled every exchange, snapping Ali's head back and preventing him from building momentum. After 10 punishing rounds, the corner stopped the fight, ending Ali's career. Holmes's jab adapted to every style. Against aggressive punchers like Ernie Shavers, it controlled distance and neutralized power. Against skilled boxer movers like Tim Witherspoon, it cut off the ring and forced them to fight on Holmes's terms. Holmes made 20 consecutive title defenses, second only to Joe Louis, and in most of those fights, the jab was the deciding factor. CompuBox statistics credit Holmes with landing it at over 50% accuracy, extraordinary for a heavyweight. But the effect went beyond numbers. The jab broke opponents mentally as much as physically. Fighters came in with strategies to neutralize it, only to be frustrated when they couldn't. Round after round, the same shot kept coming, visible but unavoidable, until confidence dissolved. Even in defeat, Holmes's jab stayed sharp. When he finally lost to Michael Spinks in 1985, it still landed with authority. If anything, Holmes's reliance on it revealed both its greatness and his dependence. In the end, Holmes showed that one punch, perfected through relentless training, could define a career. His jab wasn't just effective, it was era-defining, a weapon that secured his place among heavyweight immortals. Conclusion. Larry Holmes's story is more than the tale of a great champion. It's a masterclass in what happens when natural ability collides with relentless discipline and scientific training. The jab that made Holmes one of the most dominant heavyweights in history wasn't a gift of nature. It was built through years of brutal work, endless repetition, and an uncompromising pursuit of perfection. His lessons extend well beyond boxing. Holmes proved that excellence comes from sharpening fundamentals with consistent, deliberate practice. While others searched for shortcuts, Holmes was awake at 5 a.m., pounding the pavement, throwing thousands of jabs and polishing details until they reached championship level. Holmes's training philosophy was revolutionary and remains just as relevant today. He showed that one technique, mastered completely, could outweigh dozens performed half-heartedly. In an era that often values variety over depth, Holmes's career stands as proof that mastery comes from specialization, not diversification. Equally vital was his mental toughness. Holmes had the patience to embrace repetition, the resilience to learn from setbacks, and the humility to refine even when he was already on top. That mindset created a blueprint for long-term excellence that applies far beyond the boxing ring. Holmes didn't have Ali's charisma, Tyson's raw explosiveness, or Foreman's fearsome presence. What he had was intelligence, an unmatched work ethic, and the unshakable belief that preparation could erase any disadvantage. Those qualities carried him past fighters with greater natural gifts. Since Holmes's reign ended, the heavyweight division has produced many champions, bigger, faster, and more athletic. But few have demonstrated the same level of technical perfection in a single fundamental skill. Coaches around the world still teach Holmes's jab as the gold standard, and his methods continue to influence fighters across combat sports. Holmes's legacy proves that greatness can be built on fundamentals, that consistency outlasts flash, and that hard work often defeats talent. His jab was not just a punch, it became a symbol of discipline, inspiring generations of fighters and fans alike. The weapon Holmes built through repetition and sacrifice didn't just create the finest jab in heavyweight history, it built a legacy. His story reminds us that greatness is never born from shortcuts, but from the daily grind of repetition. One day, one rep, one jab at a time. In a sport defined by towering personalities and dramatic rivalries, Holmes showed that sometimes the most powerful story is simply a man who refused to accept anything less than perfection from himself. His jab was flawless because his training was flawless, and his training was flawless because he demanded it every single day. And that's the story of how Larry Holmes built the jab that defined an era. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about his jab? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.